In today's episode, Lorie Ladd, Ascension teacher and multidimensional channel, helps us to better understand the ascension process that humanity is moving through at this time. We answer questions such as how food plays into the ascension process, what the most important factor is to focus on in the process of moving towards 5D consciousness, and how we must experience the breakdown of collective systems in order to shift into higher states of consciousness. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our show. Super excited to have Lorie Ladd with us today. Lorie is one of the people that my wife and I have been listening to for the last year, and she was one of the first people that we started listening to when everything went down in 2020. And we just found so much solace in her message, and so many pieces came together. Lorie's a wealth of information. I mean, she's putting out videos almost every day on her channels, providing lots of support for everybody that's looking for different answers to what's going on at this point in time in a bigger picture, a higher state of consciousness to kind of view what's going on in the world right now, and how we can be active participants in it and in this shift that's taking place, rather than just sort of sitting back and getting stuck in worry and fear all the time. So Lorie's message has been such a powerful one for us over this past year. And we were so happy to sit down and be able to talk to her. And so we covered a lot of different things. I mean, we talk about stuff like, how do you get rid of soul contracts that we've signed up for that are just no longer serving us? And how do we dissolve those so that we don't keep playing these relationships over and over again, or these dramas that we find in our lives over and over again? How do we start to just dissolve that so we don't have to take it into this new transition that we're all moving to? We talk about things like our kids. We look at this higher up perspective of viewing our relationships with our kids, the behaviors that they're going through, even some of the pathologies or the diagnoses that they have. Is there another way that we can view what might be going on? And how can they be a teacher for us in many ways? We also talk about appreciating this quantum juggling act that's going on during this evolutionary shift in consciousness that's going on at this point in time. And finally, at the end, we asked Lorie, what is her vision for 2021? And she shares with us what she's learned and what her guides have been talking to her about. So stay tuned. This is such a fun episode, and she covers so much information. And so we hope you guys enjoy this episode as much as we did interviewing Lorie. I'd also like to say thank you to our amazing sponsor, EMF Harmonized, for giving everybody that views these episodes 10% off of all of their EMF mitigating technology. So things for cell phones, computers, tablets, routers, basically need to have some sort of mitigating technology to prevent the damaging EMF that comes off of these devices. All of their information is now on our website, so you can click on the links in the show notes. You can go to the website and click on the links, but click on the link and then you'll be sure to get 10% off your order. EMF Harmonize has this really unique technology where it literally creates a frequency that nullifies the negative frequencies from the EMF that we get exposed to. And I even put on my router the other day, and I just feel going into that room, it feels different. You can tell that it's not as heavy and not as dense. Now, the other thing that I want to focus on that you might not be aware of is that one of the other products that EMF Harmonize has are these body discs. And the body discs are really cool because they're actually technology that you can put on your body to help to mitigate inflammation. So when we have an inflammatory response in the body and we've got pain or soreness, we can actually do something about that. So I want to show you this little video here on the YouTube, and this is from the EMF Harmonize site. And this is research that was done by a scientist from Duke University, and they were looking at thermography scans. And so you can see on here, this fellow that they've got it on right here has a lot of inflammation. That's where you're going to see redness throughout the area. And then after placing 4 body discs on there, you can see where the red starts to actually shift in the inflammatory response and starts to go more to greenish and yellow. So substantial changes, and you'll see that on the back, on the calves, and then on the hands. And so a lot of these people that have this inflammatory response from either some sort of damage, from sort of a disease process, it could be like arthritis, but they've got, or it could be just posture related, it could be a musculoskeletal or sprain injury, but inflammation causes a lot of different problems in the body. And I think it is so fascinating that you can use this technology to put them on. It's been researched and shown to help to relieve that inflammatory response and help to take down aches and pains. So I've been using them on a strained knee that I recently had, and I've got them on both sides. And I'm finding that it's just even within the day of using them, it's already starting to kind of shift that and get the inflammation down and promote healing. So something else to look at. Now, where you can go to get them. Now, if you go to my YouTube page at Dr. Jason Loken ND, you will see any of the videos. And when you go to those videos, just click on one. So you'll see the one that we recently did, the promotional video for the EMF episode that we did with Lance Shuttler. You'll see when you go on there, you'll see 10% off your EMF harmonized order. Click this link. All you have to do is click the link. It'll take you right to the site. You can go through. Anything you get will automatically have 10% taken off. And again, these are small. These are like little sticker discs that you put on. They're not even like the bulky sort of plasticky things that you've used before with, if you've used this type of technology or something to try and mitigate EMF. They're usually a bit of a bulkier thing that I've had to put on my computer or my phone, and then it doesn't fit in the case properly or something. These are literally like a sticker that you put on, and through the heat that gets generated from the skin when you're using the body disc or from the machine itself, that's what releases the frequency that actually starts to mitigate the EMF. It's pretty fascinating. So take a look at there. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, you can click on the links on the YouTube videos. I'll have them in the show notes as well, and check it out.
Welcome to the Inspire Health Podcast. Your life is about to get a whole lot better. Have you ever felt like you tried everything and yet still couldn't find the answers or the solutions that you were seeking? Whether you're dealing with chronic illness, physical or emotional pain, I want you to know that your body is the most sophisticated machine on planet Earth. Your body holds unfathomable wisdom. Trust in it and learn from it. Know that there are answers and there are solutions to your specific health challenges. And we will be uncovering all of them here on the Inspire Health Podcast. I'm so excited to be a part of your healing journey. Your transformation starts now.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the show, and particular to our series on science, mysticism, and beyond, humanity's next phase of evolution. And today's guest, we have Lorie Ladd. We're super excited to have Lorie. She's been one of our, I would say like mentors we've listened to over the last, one of our sisters or mentors, or it just like feels like family. And we came across her through Dr. Northrup, earlier on in the year, and then we just started listening to her messages. And again, like we had talked about before with Dr. Northrup, it was just one of those messages when you feel like you are being inundated with fear and agenda and discomfort. It was like these messages felt like a warm embrace, and it felt like it empowered, and it felt like it started to actually focus on a much bigger picture that put us back in the driver's seat of where we were going. And that just felt so comforting when you feel like the world is kind of in a state of chaos. So for those of you that aren't aware of who Lorie is a multidimensional channel, author, speaker, and Ascension teacher. She assists humanity through the Great Awakening. She teaches on evolving into higher states of consciousness, integrating the human experience with the quantum field, and embodying one's own sovereignty. Lorie is reminding humanity of who they are, what they are here for, and the power of their light to shift the human collective. Lorie, what a pleasure to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me on. And yeah, I'm excited to see what comes through. So,
well, we have a whole list of stuff. I like Taya was saying earlier with when we were talking to you here that we could go on forever, I think, and have endless questions. And that seems the nature of the reality right now. But even when I read your bio, I think probably a great place to start would be, you know, this is the age-old question. I mean, who are we and what are we here for? I mean, I kind of thought, like, is it not, you know, I get up and I do my 9 to 5 and I put my time in for 40 years and then I retire if I got enough health, and then I can start to maybe do a few things. Is that not the purpose?
actually, believe it or not, that's the purpose for a lot of people. So it's interesting. There are different reasons for dropping into human form, right? So every human form has a higher consciousness in it, and each higher consciousness chooses. They aren't forced into the human body. And there are different reasons, so to speak, as to why you as a consciousness would drop in. There are millions of humans, higher consciousness beings in human form, that literally are just here to experience this reality. And in that process, they're going to be moving through this shift that we are pulling humanity through. So not everyone is here to kind of wake up to who they are necessarily, although it will happen as the collective shifts. They'll start to remember, oh, wait, I am consciousness, right? But that's not the reason they dropped in. And there are millions of us that are higher consciousness beings, whatever name you want to give it, light worker, way shower, starseed, indigo, rainbow, blah, 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 right? That dropped in to shift an entire human collective. And that work or service can look very different. You can have a mom with 7 kids at home doing the work by being the higher state. You could have somebody like myself and like you that's kind of out in the public's eye doing it. And you can have anything and everything in between. So there's not like a specific role that makes you part of this sort of, you know, army of light workers leading the pack. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. A concept I'd like to clear up too for some people, I think a lot of people be aware of some of this, and also it's different depending on how people explain it. But when you're talking about even higher levels of consciousness, what does that actually mean? For people that aren't totally aware of that, what do we mean by higher levels of consciousness, and why are they beneficial, and how do they create change?
Yeah, it's a great question. So here's how I start higher consciousness so that we can, so for the person that has no idea what ascension and energy and light is to the person that knows everything. So most people, or let's just say a majority of people, and maybe that's wrong, so maybe I'm wrong by saying majority, but let's say a lot of humans understand that we are something other than this body. So when we die, let's say we go somewhere else, right? People think we go to heaven. People think, I don't know, whatever happens, right? But there's something that happens where you exit out of the body. That's a consciousness. Okay, so we can start there. Now, consciousness is just energy. Energy is light. And depending upon the frequency, which is a spin or a dimension, that's going to dictate how that consciousness is experienced. So if you are a really high consciousness, that means you're vibrating, you're spinning, your light is spinning really fast. You're in a really high state of consciousness. So you have knowledge, awareness, beingness that we can't comprehend from this dimensional field because we're dense, right? And so there's like a spectrum, you can say, of consciousness. It's a quantum field. So there's an infinite amount of consciousness that can be experienced and that you can be in any now moment based on the frequency that your consciousness, that the consciousness is holding. And we all have a consciousness within us. It's hard to feel or tap into that consciousness because we are so physical. When consciousness or energy slows down, it becomes denser or more physical. So everything that we're seeing, a tree, a rock, it's consciousness slowed down to physicality. If that consciousness were to spin up its frequency or its light, it would become less dense, less dense, less dense. Does this make sense?
Mm-hmm. Well, and from a practical point of view, then for somebody, when is the way that we feel, like our feeling sense, the state of the emotional awareness that we're at, is that related to the higher states of consciousness? So for example, sometimes I think of it in this way, and you can tell me if this is accurate or not, but I think of a lot of times like these higher sort of states of consciousness would be moving into different fields that generally feel more open, more expansive, less judgmental, just less restrictive. So say, for example, as something like a field of being in a state of fear, where then that's the lens I see the world at. So then I generally live in a fearful world. That's what I'm going to see. That's what I'm going to feel. It's going to trigger my physiology in that way over and over again. If I'm starting to move into a different level that maybe is like a level of courage, or even up to a level of like lovingness or kindness for myself, then all of a sudden that's the lens that I start to see the world at, and I view myself, and then it becomes expansive because I'm seeing things from a different level of consciousness that was always there. But because I'm spinning at a different frequency, I'm going to pick out parts that I never saw before when I was more in a state of, say, fear, for example.
Exactly. Beautiful. Perfect. This is how I like to describe it. I see it as like almost like a spectrum, we're going to use linear because we can comprehend linearity better than quantum. When you start talking quantum, people can get confused. So in terms of like really understanding how consciousness works and how you start tapping into higher states of consciousness or being in it, we can look at it as like a linear lens, like linear or a spectrum like this. And then let's talk about another spectrum above that, and then another spectrum above that, right? Like tubes of consciousness, okay? And we can call these dimensional fields. So third dimensional field, on top of that is a fourth dimensional field, on top of that is a fifth dimensional field. Each dimensional field has consciousness or light that's spinning in a specific frequency to allow it to be in that dimensional field and in that spectrum. Each spectrum holds consciousness and experiences, ways of being, ways of experiencing yourself as a consciousness. So in a third dimensional spectrum, in a third dimensional field, here we all are, right? And there's a gamut, massive amount of experiences to be had, right? And if your body is holding this frequency, third dimensional frequency, you're going to be able to tap into all those different consciousnesses, and you get to play with fear, and you get to play with peace, and you get to play with anger, and you get to play with joy, and all these things are here, and you get to play with them all. Now, what starts to happen is as your body starts to hold more light, it naturally begins to increase in its frequency, and it starts to shift into a little bit of a higher frequency. It happens naturally. You don't have to do anything. It's a natural process. And then you find yourself in a little bit of a different state. All of a sudden, you're responding differently, you're reacting differently, you're tapping into different emotions more regularly, perhaps. You're not finding yourself in fear as much. Fourth dimensional field, right? You're still in a third dimensional field. You're still tapping into it. You're floating down into it every once in a while, probably a lot. But you're noticing that you're holding different states more often. States that are more present moment. Maybe you're feeling a little bit more unified with people. Maybe you're not holding such a triggered response to how people are. There's a lot that can be experienced. Then what happens? Your body starts to hold a little bit more light, and you start to find yourself in this other spectrum of consciousness, 5D consciousness, which is really this dimensional field that we're pulling humanity up into. And that is where you are no longer resonating with fear. You don't resonate with anger and rage. Now, here's what's happening though, because anger and rage and fear and divide, they don't exist in this dimensional field. They don't vibrate in that field. So you can't access it. Now, you can access it because we're quantum, and all we have to do is bring ourselves into a little bit of a lower frequency, and boom, fear, boom, anger, right? So our bodies are doing this like 3-layered kind of, I'm bipolar all the time type of feeling, right? Like I'm losing my mind every day, because your body is learning how to hold these higher states and then dropping back down and then going back up. So you're feeling like, but what ends up happening is this sort of roller coaster just continues to go up, right? So you're always in this roller coaster of moving up and down, but that baseline is continuing to move up. So you aren't feeling fear, anger, rage as often. You're not feeling divide as often. You're able to hold more empathy and compassion more often, right? So it's not a black white. You're never going to have fear, anger, rage, whatever, right? It's how often are you, in your now moments, are you feeling these other spectrums of consciousness?
Mm-hmm.
So for listeners who are tuning in for the first time to this sort of information, Lorie, is this just for now, this current time that we're in, or has this always been the case where we've been this able and this powerful to be able to kind of shift between 3D, 4D, 5D, and maybe even do so consciously?
I mean, the answer is we've always been able to, but imagine a massive, dense blanket over us, right? The density of the planet was so, the frequency was so low for a very long time that to be able to kind of pop our awareness out of that first layer and into even a fourth dimension was almost impossible for a very long time, which is why we have light workers and way showers and starseeds on the earth plane, because they come in unbeknownst to themselves to anchor and hold higher frequencies of light so that they can shift the earth plane. And so as the earth plane, as the body of earth starts to hold these higher frequencies, our bodies are on the earth and we're frequency. Together, we start to shift that frequency, but it took thousands of years to be able to get us to where we are now. And we, not to get too technical or to keep this as simple as possible, there was a moment in 1987 where there was a massive shift in the frequency, and then it was go time, meaning we were now capable of sort of doing this 3-layered dance that we're doing, because we had lifted the frequency on the earth plane and the frequency within the human body high enough to where we could now easily start to play in these fields. And what's happening now in 2020 is the light, the human warriors that are awake now and shining, it's so high frequency that, I mean, not only are people just waking up, but we're now just consciously like, oh my God, I'm in 5D. Oh my God, I'm in 3D. Oh my God, I'm in 60. You know, we're just like we're so aware now because the frequency is so high on the planet. It's like it's accelerating since 1987. It just is skyrocketing.
Mm-hmm. And when you talk about waking up, what will people experience when they feel like they are waking up?
And what does that even mean?
What does that mean? I have no idea.
What are we waking up to?
God, that's a great question. What are we waking up to? You know, it's that saying, waking up out of a dream, right? Waking up out of the illusion of who and what we thought we were and who and what we thought this was all about. So it's really like waking up out of the dream of this physical reality. So we're starting to recognize, when you wake up, you start to recognize that you've been almost playing in something or participating in something. You become an observer when you start to wake up. You start to realize, oh, wait a second. I'm in something right now. There's something, I'm participating in something. Wait a second. I don't think I'm just this physical body, right? Wait a second. I actually have choice. Wait a second. There's energy and consciousness. What does that mean? You know, and so it's like, depending upon how you wake up, there's these milestones that you go through, right? Of the waking up process. You start to recognize behaviors. Wait a second. You become conscious of your behaviors. Holy cow, look at what I've been doing for, oh my God, look at how I react and respond to this person. Everything gets turned on, like your light, like your eyes, you turn on. You start observing, you start seeing, and then you realize so many things. The purpose of waking up is to become who you've always been in physical form. So we're designed to be higher dimensional beings in physicality as a multidimensional human. So you have access to gifts, ability, they're not even gifts, they're abilities that many of us don't have access to yet because our bodies are still in a very physical state, right? But we start to have telepathy, we start to have a now moment state where you're not in past, you're not in future. You start to have the ability to manifest and intend in every now moment. So you're constantly creating. There's no such thing as waiting for things. There's all these things that start to happen when you wake up. and become this recognize that you're this higher dimensional consciousness in physical form, walking around in a quantum field. But it's baby steps and milestones that you're taking, right?
This is the part that's so exciting. I mean, this is the part where if you haven't kind of dived into this a little bit and you're just watching what's kind of on mainstream, I mean, this is where it's like such a different world. You're either really getting stuck in a lot of the heavy fear stuff, or there's this world of opportunity potential that is just sprouting that we can be active participants in, right? And why now though? Like, I mean, I know you mentioned back in the 1987 or so, there was a big shift. And is this just a natural evolution to where we are now? Or is something else like, why is everything, there's a massive shift going on right now, particularly. And, I think all this stuff that's happened, like whether that was a catalyst for it or whether that was all part and parcel of it having to happen to bring up all this light, like why now? What's sort of gone on with right now? This is particularly 2020.
We're ready for it. So imagine a dimmer, a light switch that's like a dimmer, right? And so naturally, when you just start to turn the switch, it just gets brighter and brighter and brighter. It's just a natural thing. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to say magic words. You don't have to mantra your way through that light switch, right? It just naturally, it's part of how the electrical circuit is set up. It just does, okay? So that turn, imagine the light being your body. And as more humans wake up and hold high frequency light, as more light that's coming down onto the earth plane from the sun, which is a different light than the light we feel coming down on us. It's a totally different frequency. When that light the light has always been designed to come in to shift the planet and the human body. So it's a relationship, it's a consciousness. The sun is a consciousness. The sun isn't a form just hanging tough. The sun is actually consciousness, and it's designed and it has a contract with the earth plane. So the sun is allowing the earth plane to pull in high frequency light. And imagine that as the planet is pulling in light, as the human body is pulling in light, the dimmer just naturally starts to move, right? And so what's happening right now is that our bodies are in a high enough frequency based on that light coming down and that dimmer starting to turn, that we could now go through the physical shift, which is what we call the Great Awakening. It's a physical shift now, which means that our bodies are now going to start to physically move up those two layers, fourth dimension and fifth dimension. Before, for thousands of years, and even in this human lifetime that you've had, it's been almost like your body has been absorbing as much light as possible, anchoring as much light as possible, but it hasn't made that physical shift yet, right? So the COVID was the initial sort of domino that would allow us to begin to catapult, like being shot out of a cannon, catapult, jump physically into these higher dimensional realms, because our bodies could hold it. Our bodies were ready to make that physical leveling up. If COVID had happened, and I'm saying COVID, not the actual like physical COVID, but let's just call it the consciousness of COVID. If it had happened 3 years ago, 1% of the population that woke up would have woken up, because they would not have been ready energetically. So it was divine. It was actually divinely planned. It's divine how it happened and when it happened. It could have been something else. Something else was designed to come first, but we were not holding high enough frequencies. So it could have been a much quicker, this is fast, but it could have been this is actually, time is so weird. So like COVID is actually fast, but it's also very slow, because we're still going through it, and we're probably going to be going through this COVID consciousness for quite some time. There was an original sort of domino that was supposed to come in and shift us much faster, like a massive tornado, but the bodies weren't ready for it. So it would have done more damage, because we're electric, right? And if there's too much frequency or energy that hits us, it could do a lot of damage for the physical form. So, yeah, does that help?
Oh yeah, for sure. Then for people right at the moment, wanting to stay in higher frequencies, higher vibrations to support themselves, to support the collective, what are the things that they actually can do to facilitate that process?
Yes. Yes. Okay. Okay. There's so many good ones. All right.
And
Well,
all of our listeners and viewers will have to, like, each of these guests that we're bringing on, it's just, it's just an introduction. And we're highly encouraging everyone to actually start following each and every one of these people, including Lorie Ladd. I mean, she comes out with content on a daily basis.
Yeah.
She has been a rock for many, including us, throughout this, this turbulent weather that we've all been, swirling around in for this past year. So aside from what Lorie is going to share with us today, please make sure you go and subscribe and sign up to her newsletters and try out her meditations. They're incredibly priced. Like, they're so reasonable. And we were so grateful for that. And you actually inspired us to start creating content and making it extremely accessible for people as well, because this is how we start to raise everyone consciously and collectively and efficiently.
Exactly. Okay, so here's the biggest piece. The only way to stay in higher states of consciousness, and I only talk about what I've gone through. I never talk about things that I haven't gone through. So I'm with you. I'm going through it with you, and so I don't speak unless I've experienced it and gone through it. So the only way to stay in higher states of consciousness is to clear trauma. And the only way to clear trauma is to feel everything that comes up without attachment or judgment. So that is, I would put that first before anything else. And you can do it all at the same time. So it's not like, you have to stay in these states where you're constantly feeling uncomfortable feelings, but you have to be able, remember, we're on 3 levels all the time. Right? And when you find yourself on a lower level where you're like, this sucks, I hate this is where the magic happens. So to be first, like, most important key, I think, in terms of being in higher states of consciousness is to detach and allow yourself to feel every single thing when you're in that lower state that you don't like. If you try, and I'm telling you by example, if you try to pull yourself out of the consciousness that needs to clear, you're going to do the ping pong. And we've been doing the ping pong, right? There's a natural ping pong, and then there's an egoic ping pong. I don't want to feel that. I'm going to try to go here, back down. I don't want to feel that. I'm going to try to go back up. We are programmed to not feel uncomfortable feelings. We're programmed to. It's just what we've been learned, what we know to do. So to be in higher states of consciousness as often as you cannot deny the uncomfortable trauma and pain and emotions and beliefs and behaviors and thoughts that need to come up so that you can love them and feel them. And the key to feeling them is to detach, right? So you're like, the best analogy that I use for myself is you're floating down the river. That's your life, right? You're moving down the river. And here comes a big boulder, which is like trauma from some other now moment that you had in a relationship, or God knows what, your mother, your dad, who knows, right? And you feel, let's say you're feeling, what would be a good emotion? You're feeling like a depressed state, like really, really depressed, or you're feeling really angry. When you hit that boulder, the emotion comes up, right? And what we do sometimes when we don't like what we're feeling is we'll grab the boulder, right? And we will identify with it. I am ... I'm depressed. I'm angry. There's something wrong with me. Why am I feeling this? I'm supposed to be ascending. Lorie said there's this 5D state, and why am I feeling this boulder, right? You grab the boulder and you start having a conversation with the boulder, and then the boulder becomes your reality. And then you're trying to get out of the boulder. Instead, you want to just float, hit the boulder. Shit, that was painful. Like, what is that? And that's it. Then you just keep moving, meaning I'm feeling depressed today. Okay, great. That's it. You get up and you do whatever you're going to do, or you lay in bed, but you don't attach to it, right? You don't grab it and say, what is this? Why am I feeling this? What does this mean about me? How do I get out of it? And when you start doing that, your whole world changes. Your whole world changes because you're no longer controlled by any emotion you have. So that's first key. Second piece that I would say is really important in terms of staying in higher states of consciousness is always being the observer. Observe, 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 and then observe again. Meaning, I'm now doing a podcast. I'm now drinking water. I'm now going to grab my phone. I'm now making dinner. Everything you're doing, you start to become aware that you're the observer. The reason this is key for higher states of consciousness is because it detaches you. When you're attached to anything, you're going to stay in that state. You're going to stay in whatever you're at, right? So when you observe, you're allowing yourself to sort of move, and you'll find yourself detached, kind of floating in those higher states a little bit more, because when you do drop down, you're not attached. You're just observing yourself in it, and then watch, boom, you pop right back out of it. Being the observer is like magic. Also magic, compassion. So compassion can keep you in higher states, because if you have compassion for when you're down here, anger, rage, irritability, yelling at someone at the grocery store because they're telling you certain things that you need to be doing, right? You know, whatever it is that you're feeling in these lower states that we feel right now, perhaps. If you have compassion for yourself while you're having it, like, I'm a rock star. I don't care. If I'm angry and yelling at somebody, I'm still a rock star. I'm still amazing. I'm still awesome sauce. And when you do that from an observer perspective of just being the human, you pop right out of that dimensional field instantaneously. And so, boom, back up to a higher state of consciousness, right? So feeling it all, observer and compassion are three key things to really practice. Now, in terms of like techniques to do, music, meditation, being outside, you know, giving yourself whatever you need, rest, massages, eating whatever your body wants, whether it's good food, being around people that, you know, that have the same frequency as you. Those are like tools that you, I mean, you know, like exercises, I guess you can do, but I find those less important. And I find the sort of really nitty gritty tools to be really what's important in terms of staying in those higher states.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's brilliant. We use an exercise that we learned years back from a teacher of ours, Pema Chodron, and she talked about fear exercise. So she would say it's feel it in your body, embrace the feeling, allow the thoughts to dissolve. And then once that starts to kind of burn itself out, then remember the millions of others going through something similar, because it's a process to build up natural compassion. So the idea that when we suffer, we either get pulled away, or it can be one of the most strongest uniting factors in our lives too. But it's the hardest part, because it's like people are like, well, why the fuck am I going to sit with this? I mean, we are so trained from early on. Like we use this example, like even we've got little kids. So you'll see very quickly where it's like, if a child's crying, you know, very quickly people want to try and get them to stop crying. Then like give them something, put something on, like get them so they're back okay. Mostly because I think people just aren't comfortable themselves with that feeling. And we're kind of just then taught that that's what we're supposed to do. But we get so disconnected from just allowing ourselves to feel and feel the transition that naturally evolves when you just stay, you know. And even when I think about from like what'll go through my head is when I think about it from even like a neuropeptide point of view. I mean, we create these neuropeptides, these molecules of motion that literally get stored in the body. That's like our subconscious is in the body. And when you can stay with those feelings without kind of it's like an ember. Don't make it bigger than it is. Just let it burn itself out without blowing on it or putting kindling on it or anything. And it's like these peptides just dissolve. And then you kind of naturally just feel something different without trying to do anything. You're not trying to get out of it. You're just not trying to move away from it. Right.
Bingo. Yeah.
I find that like such a huge valuable practice. And what we're noticing a lot now, and it's like all of everybody's shit is coming up like so big right now. And we did a talk just the other day, and it was funny as we were talking about this concept of emotional digestion. and we're going to do a talk on it, we get a text from my mom that comes in that was just saying how basically they're going through tons of renovations and their place of disaster, and all of the stuff that they had in the storage that they haven't seen forever is all sitting right in their living room right now because they got nowhere. We just started laughing where I go, oh my God,
It's a
that is
perfect
like
metaphor.
classic.
It's a metaphor for what all of us are experiencing right now. It's all the junk from our trunk, all our shit is just rising up for us to see it. And not necessarily even ours as we can know it, but it's like so much more. And it's, there's a lot of people even within our circle, we hear, I can't wait till this goes back to normal in springtime. And we don't say anything because we understand that people will kind of receive the information when they're ready, or they'll ask us if they would like guidance around that, or they would just tune in to the podcast. But we thought, well, you know what? It's just going to resurface in other ways. Like if you're not willing to see all this stuff, showing up within the character of your partner, then it's just going to resurface in your coworker. It's going to resurface in you taking a walk through the trail and all of a sudden something unexpected shows up there. It's like, it'll just show up differently, but it'll keep showing up in your life until it's ultimately seen, felt, healed, and then dissolved.
Yep. As you were talking, they were showing me like the body is what is shifting, right? The body is what is moving into these higher states. So if you think about all of our previous now moments where we have sort of experienced something external and digested that experience into our bodies, right? Like the neuropeptides you were talking about, right? So we have these emotions, these beliefs, these behaviors, they're stored in our body as consciousnesses and energy. They're typically in a lower frequency and the reason they're in our bodies is because when we had the experience back then, whenever that was, we didn't feel it. It was uncomfortable. So now what we are being pummeled into, especially this month, but all year round, all year long, and every year before that, but now quite consciously, is there's so much light that's moving into the body now that it is accentuating that density. It's literally bumping into that density now and blowing it up in people, right? So there's like these dark spots that are like bursting, and people don't really know necessarily how to deal with every single thing that is coming up in order to flush through the body so that your body can continue to hold those higher states of consciousness, that higher frequency of light. There's more space for the light. So if you see it like that, then you're like, oh, bring it on. What else is coming? Oh my God, you're going to trigger something in me. Great. That means I have this emotion to look at. Oh my God, look at this behavior that I've been doing. You look at it from a perspective of like, I'm the like ascension scientist, and I'm now watching myself through these like ascension goggles instead of like really attaching to the experience of it, but instead saying, oh, look, my physical body is ascending. Holy cow, I'm feeling ... Yes, every time I feel something I don't like, every time I have a trigger, every time anything happens, I'm just like, bring it, because this means I'm shifting into higher states. Bring it on, because you're shifting. It's just the body dissolving any past now moments that you never completely allowed through because it was uncomfortable, you didn't like it, it created whatever sort of situation, right? We all have a lot of it, but it's really just physics, just energy, just different frequencies of energy. But this month in particular, ladies and gentlemen, listen. 2021, and again, time is so funny when you say that, right? But it's all now moment. But we have got to have the clearest bodies as possible so that we can hold the higher states of consciousness more often in every now moment, so that we can guide the rest of humanity through what is coming. And this month, and all of the last 10, 11 months, we've been doing that unconsciously or consciously. We've been clearing our bodies. We've been going through so much for the sole purpose of being able to step into what's coming that's going to be a little bit more quote unquote intense than what we've been going through. And we can be the ones in the front lines, and we know how to do this. We're no longer working through our own stuff any longer. We're always going to have density clearing, but it's not going to be as intense because we really dived in. Like, we've got a couple weeks left. Again, time is so silly, right? Because it's like, well, what happens January 1st? Everything's done. Well, no, there's always the now moment of continuing, but the frequency on the planet is so high right now. There's so much light coming in that every day you're being shown something new to feel. Every day you're being shown something new to look at. And I'm telling you, it's not about you. It's not about you. It's about the entire human collective that needs you, because they can't see yet. And they're not going to know how to navigate what's coming because they're not awake yet. And they need us to step up. They don't know they need us. They need us to step up, to hold the higher frequencies, to assist them through this. Now, they're going to yell at us. They're going to call us conspiracy theories. They're going to call us all these things. But they need us to do this for them. And so that's what this month is really all about. How much trauma can I clear out of my body? How much emotion can I continue to feel? Because although it's about me, it's really not about me. It's not about me. It's about what is coming in the next now moment and how I am here for this. You are here for this. This is why you are on the planet. No matter what your job is, it doesn't matter what your job is. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter what you eat. It matters that you are continuing to clear your body so that you can understand that you're on the front lines and that you are absolutely unequivocally needed for what is coming. And what is coming is much more intense than what we've just experienced.
When's that part coming?
Not only when is it coming, but what is it, right? Like, wait, what is it? I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. First of all, I tell my guides I don't want to know because I don't want to know. I don't want to know when. I don't want to. What I can say is it's not going to be as traumatic as kind of this COVID experience was, because this was the first sort of rattle of like, what the, what, right? Like, and everybody started waking up and everyone started going down all these like rabbit holes, and like all this stuff just started to unravel for humanity. So for those of us that have already kind of been going through this, what's coming isn't going to be as intense. Those that are behind us that haven't woken up, it's going to be pretty intense, but it needs to be to wake them up, right? But for us, it's not going to be as intense. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we're going to be like, oh, we've been shifting timelines. We got this. We know how to jump into a different timeline. We know how to hold the higher timelines. We know how to do all this. We got this. It could be a year from now. It could be 2 years from now. It could be 6 months from now. I don't know, but there is more unraveling. This is just the beginning of this massive shift. So it's really, we've just started, but it's always beautiful. We're always safe. And so it's not a doomsday type of like, oh my God, we're screwed. It's the opposite. We're moving into this heaven on earth. Just like our own bodies, we have to feel that density. We have to feel that trauma, right? We have to feel it. Like, oh, I have to look back at the day that like my mother left me at the grocery store for 3 hours and I thought I was, we have to go back and see it. And that's what we're doing with the collective, right? It's like, we got to see what's been going on behind the scenes and we got to feel it. But we have to realize that that is not the reality. That trauma in my body isn't the reality. My reality is right here, right now, right? And it's what I'm creating in every now, but I do have to see it and feel it in order to dissolve it. So it's almost like an illusion.
Mm-hmm. That's such an important part though, that I think at this point too, because again, kind of ties back and when we were watching the work you were doing with Damien Wynn just the other day too, on the vaccination detox. And I was like, oh, it was so nice to hear it reiterated again. But it was this, a lot of times I feel like, I mean, I know sometimes for us, like I was saying to Taya the other day, it's like, sometimes it feels like we're just living in our own reality, and some people would almost think like, well, you're not actually facing reality. It's like, no, I'm facing my own reality. And because that's what I want the world to look like, that's what I want my life to be like. And the more that is completely real for me, and embodied within me, that's where we're moving, right? And also, just like you said, knowing that we need to do that
not just for us, but because that's holding a space for everybody to be able to move towards.
And
right?
we've also like intuitively known that even from the beginning of this year. And in a moment, I'll ask you to speak a little bit more about timelines. But before we get there, we've known that there's something within both of us, thankfully, because we're on the same page and we've been able to talk to each other and really nobody else other than you, but we've been getting no feedback from you on the screen until now. But realistically, it's been really trying, because we felt like, well, what is this then? It's conjured up a lot of conversations because our reality, as Jason says, is very different from the reality of the majority of our family and friends out there. And it's not one that we've even been able to talk to them much about because there's this big resistance and block and almost anger and irritability that rises up when we do try to convey something that that ultimately doesn't land anywhere. So having said that, I wanted to ask you, can you speak a little bit more about timelines? What does that exactly mean? Like if we talk about fate and destiny and these things being predestined, then where is our free will? Is there a place for that?
It's so funny. Jason Shurka and I were just talking about the other night, free will and divine destiny, like the divine plan, right? And he was like, I can't do it. My mind's going to be blown. I can't go there right now. And I was like, let's go. I want to go in. They both exist, right? So we always have free will. So we're always creating in every now moment. And we are in a quantum field, which means that in any now moment, you can create anything from this vast array of experiences, okay? There is also a sort of plan that you've designed for yourself, which is why we have an Akashic record. So an Akashic record was designed to be sort of the map. So imagine that you're going into a new land and you have the map, but there's 1,000 things that could happen, right? When you're trying to navigate, you've got like a physical map and you're on the ground and you're now like backpacking into the middle of nowhere. Now you have the map. So you kind of know where you're going. There's an end place for you, right? And there's a path that you hopefully can stay on, but you may veer off, free will. You may find yourself going somewhere else, but then you find yourself coming back to that trail, that map. The higher self is an aspect of you that knows all of this and that keeps you on track. Now, that is also intuition. That's a gut knowingness. I think I need to go do this. I think I should be doing this. I think I know that there's something happening right now in this world, right? That's the higher self speaking to you and sort of reminding you that there is a map. But you also have free will. So you could find a waterfall and go hang out in the waterfall for 7 days, right? And that waterfall could be a relationship. It could be a job. So that's how I describe free will and also the divine plan. Now, there is an Akashic record divine plan for the entire human collective, which is you all are moving into a 5D field and then you're going to continue. That's the simple divine plan. Now, how we do that is up to us. And it's literally like, I don't know how these higher dimensional beings have been able to watch us, because I would have so much anxiety and stress watching the human collective do this. I swear I would be like, oh my God, are they going to get it? Are they going to do it? Is it going to happen? What's going to happen now? How are they navigating COVID? Oh my God, are they going to shift that timeline, right? Or are they going to have the mandated vaccine? What are they going to do? So that's free will, okay? As a human collective. So here's how free will works with a timeline in a big divine plan. No matter what, divine plan, human collective is going into a 5D field, heaven on earth, whatever you want to call it, new earth, doesn't matter. It's a 5th dimensional field. Imagine it like that spectrum, right? How long it takes for us to get there is completely up to the human collective and how we raise our frequency. But a timeline is a path, a road, based on the frequency that you are holding. You're on a timeline based on your frequency. That timeline or road is going to create experiences, events, people, places, whatever, based on your frequency. Now, when your frequency shifts, you literally jolt into another timeline. We're always shifting timelines. We just don't realize it because we're not conscious of it. Now, the human collective is the same way. As a human collective, when it's holding a frequency, it's on a timeline. That timeline is going to create possibilities, not absolutes. So there is a timeline that humanity is standing on, okay, that says mandated vaccines. Mandated. I'm not talking about like the option, okay? Now, if the human collective that's awake, but this is why it's so important that we do our work. If the human collective is holding a high enough frequency and they're holding that higher timeline, and this has already been happening, that was part of my video today, is we can shift and pull humanity into a new timeline. Even if it's incremental, which it typically is, it's not massive jumps. And all of a sudden, we're in a different timeline. And it's a timeline where maybe only 7 countries now are mandated, right? Whereas before it was every country's mandated. I don't know what the timeline looks like, right? And then all of a sudden we start continuing to hold those higher frequencies and we jump to a little bit higher timeline. Now only 1 country's mandated, right? The issue or the problem that we have around holding higher timelines is that when you're in a timeline, the external reality is going to convince you that this is an absolute. This is absolutely happening, right? Mandated vaccines are an absolute, right? Everyone's going to have to do this. It's an absolute because it looks like it, because it's the timeline you're on. But if you understand energy, frequency, and the shifting of the human collective, it doesn't matter what they're saying. And that has no bearing on what is coming next. That's the power that we have. So the way you shift is that you focus on the timeline that you want in your reality. What timeline is that? No mandated vaccines, where we're all free, we're all healthy, we're all choosing, blah, blah, blah. Now, when you wake up in the morning and you're inundated by all this fear consciousness, great, bring it on, because we're clearing you. I don't care. I know the power of our ability to shift. And what my guide showed me today was that there is a massive amount of collapsing of these mandated vaccines. Mandated. Now, again, I just want to preface, there's nothing wrong if you feel like taking the vaccine. I'm not saying that. But in terms of the mandation of taking away humans' ability to choose, that's being dissolved. And they were showing me. And so they're like, have the humans start watching what's happening. There's things that are happening where it's not playing out. And it's because of us. It's because of us. We're shifting it. That's why clearing out our trauma and holding these higher states is beyond important. It's the only thing that matters other than loving ourselves and loving humanity, right? But it's that powerful, and we're doing it. We are literally shifting the human collective. I don't care what people say. We're shifting the human collective over and over and over.
Yeah.
It's miraculous.
Yeah, it's so exciting, and it's also like it's like I mean, gosh, talk about giving people a sense of purpose, right? I mean, it's like, how many people get jazzed by watching anything about superheroes and this sort of idea, and it's like there's this bigger than yourself kind of mission that's going on in some ways, and I mean, even like prior to getting this whole aspect of it, it's like, even before, when we were talking about trauma and stuff, trauma is like transgenerational. Like, I mean, we carry trauma from, we know that from an epigenetic standpoint from the science part, and understood that well beyond that from other people before they ever decided to try and explain it through science. But it's this idea that it's like, even before we conceived was the idea of like, okay, what are some of the big traumas that we have not dealt with that we don't want to pass on to our kids before we decide to conceive and have kids? So, I mean, there was a couple of years of really working with a lot of, not that we got out all of that stuff. I mean, they're going to still get some stuff, but it was this awareness that it's like, if we clear some of that stuff, we can it can be done. Like, you don't have to pass this stuff on. Like, you can kind of stop that. And I think about that a lot like this. It's like, if we can, collectively hold these sort of states, it's like, I mean, wow. I mean, there's this really very, very real potential of moving the whole collective into this space. And it's why I think it's so important too, to do the personal work. Well, to do the personal work. And then when you're doing the personal work, to then connect with like-minded people, to do like the
like when I've done some of the global meditations with you and Jason Shurka, and there's different things like that. So then you collectively can come together to just kind of like outpour that, right? And I feel like those are always additional pieces. That was like the premise behind the book that we did called Letters That Move the World, Intentional Acts of Gratitude, is this idea of creating like a focus moment for positive shift, just to try and kind of just do things to try and create this push a little bit, right? But I mean, to me, it's really exciting. It's a really exciting possibility.
Can I ask you one thing about, so you've mentioned the body a few times, and as far as there's actually shifts happening within our physical body, that's where the shift is taking place. And even as far as the light coatings that are incoming, it's happening within the physical body. Where is the place then for diet? Like I've heard about fasting as well, and that being a really important thing, especially at this time. I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I've had an interesting relationship with diet and food. I had an eating disorder for a really long time. And so my relationship with food and diet and fasting and eating has been very interesting, to say the least. So I have always been shown by my guides that the least amount of pressure that you can put on yourselves around diet and food, the better time you're going to have navigating this. Meaning, there is no, here is what is truth in terms of energy. When your body continues to anchor and hold higher states of consciousness, your body will naturally no longer want to eat meat. It's just going to naturally not want to have animal product. Now, I still eat animal product, right? So there is a time in the human body where we will reach that state, okay? Now, many of us are choosing not to eat animal products for all different types of reasons. We're vegan, we're blah, 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 right? But in terms of physics, let's just talk physics. There will be a time where the body will no longer want the animal stuff. So we won't have cheese and eggs and all that really fun stuff that's so delicious to eat. So in the meantime, if you know that, right, and you know that this is a natural process, then the more that you can relax into whatever it is that your body is asking for, the easier this will be for you. But here's the problem or the issue with food. We're food addicts. A lot of us, many of us are food addicts, meaning that we use food to be able to manage our life, to be able to manage our emotions, to be able to manage our relationships. And food is really fun. It's a really fun part of being human. I mean, who doesn't like a really cheesy, garlicky pizza? Like there's like really good foods that we get to enjoy. But your body will start to tell you what it needs. Your body will start to say, no more of that, please, right? And then all of a sudden you'll start doing celery juices or something, right? And that's the lens that I use in terms of teaching about diet and food. Now, let's talk more linear, third dimensional. Is it better for your body to eat really healthy foods? Yeah, like we're not going to have that debate, right? It's obviously much better for your physical body to eat healthy, living foods that are grown from the earth, that doesn't have pesticides in it, that's not from a bag, yeah. Okay, so if that's the path you want to go down, by all means, go down that. Is that going to help you ascend faster? No. You want to know what's going to help you ascend faster? Dealing with your trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we have this idea that if we feed our bodies, I think Damian Wayne and I were talking about this yesterday in the actual workshop, but if you actually deal with the trauma, then your food desires will change. Yeah. But if you try to change your food so that you can change your frequency, I mean, go for it. But it's the trauma that is what's going to shift you, right? You're going to feel better. Like if you have a burger, right? Your body's going to tell you whether that resonates or not. There's nothing wrong with resonating with a burger, but your body will say yes or no to that, right? So we want to listen to what the body needs. We want to remember that no matter what, we're all ascending, and there will come a point where we will be drinking and eating things very different than we are right now. You know, is eating a healthy diet good? Yeah, I eat super healthy, super clean, right? But is it going to help me ascend? No. Dealing with my trauma is going to help me ascend. It's all frequency. And let me just preface this, because a lot of people are going to be triggered. If you sit and eat crappy food all the time, is it going to hold you in a lower state? Maybe. It might do some damage. It might keep you down lower, but also it's this natural process where it's like, eat whatever you want, because as soon as you deal with your trauma, you're going to shift. So it's kind of like, I don't know. Does this make sense what I'm saying?
It totally does, Lorie. It totally makes me think it's just, you're just really getting at the root of things, right? I mean, it's like, it's like you can try and almost intellectually convince yourself to do something and sort of use like motivation, which is not a very renewable resource, to get yourself somewhere when you're not really in alignment with it. Or you kind of work on the underlying thing and then you just get pulled up because you're kind of on the escalator taking you up there, right? Because you're in alignment with it. And now it's like, that just feels normal. That just feels natural, right?
When I had just given birth to our smallest one about 3 years ago in 2017, I remember soon after I gave birth, I feel like each of my births have been such a gift, because each incoming soul at around that time has brought in so much inspiration and insight within and through me that I've needed to act and shift my life in different ways. But with this little one, our Sage, I remember at the time I was hearing a lot of people commenting on social media, advertisements, talking about losing weight and getting in your best shape. And for the new year, this could be your what do they call it? Resolution. And and I remember deep inside, it's just like, this is so wrong. This is so wrong. I feel like you're just dealing with the symptoms of this deep-seated wound within you, which might have to do with, not feeling good enough, or feeling unlovable, and feelings of abandonment. Like, I feel like these are at the root of a lot of the stuff that we go through that, causes us to go and eat a whole entire bag of potato chips in the middle of the night. Or, as I was carrying my newborn and holding on to my toddler, and my teenager was at the background yelling at me, and I was just stuffing my face with whole chocolate bars. I'm like, this is not right.
Forget it. I'm just going to keep doing it.
And it, you don't really even taste it at that moment. So innately that it's not about the food. It's about stuffing down something that's deep within, that is really hurting within you, that doesn't feel supported, that doesn't feel loved, that doesn't feel validated. So I ended up having a window when, all my kids were asleep, and I wrote this blog about it, because I felt like, as a collective, we need to understand that regardless of what new diet you go on and what new fad you try out, or however times you do fasting, you're not going to get at the root of feeling unloved or not feeling good enough. And so what our mission is now, to bring people as much information as we can through the different platforms that we've created. There was also one that we created the same year, Adventures in Joy, and it's the experiential part. We encourage people to go on retreats and to uproot whatever it is that they're coming in with, and not be close to any sort of distractions or even their partners, so that they can go on this journey. Because I feel like this is the world that we're moving into now. We need to actually allow these things to come up and love ourselves wholeheartedly, and know that we're not alone in these feelings. So it's been really profound, because kids have helped me personally to bring that up within me. They've been such a big catalyst, and even goosebumps, chills all over right now, because where we're moving into right now, I feel like it's been our children who are going to be, these angelic children on this earth plane, who are going to be big catalysts for creating a big shakeup.
Yeah, I got massive goosebumps all over my whole body when you said that.
So, because that gets us right here, like, you know, all the barriers are down and all the defenses are down, and it's going to hit all of us right here, and it's going to be really profound. So as far as children, I know you've talked about star seeds and raising star seeds recently. Can you touch a little bit on that?
Yeah, so, you know, it's interesting. I never know what's going to come next for my work. I'm always just showing up, and then what comes next comes next. And my mom used to say, like the last couple of years, she's like, you know, you're going to be working with kids. You know, you're going to be working with kids. And I'm like, I'm not working with kids. It's the last thing I'm going to be doing. And I have a Patreon community, and I do this thing called Super Chat, where I bring somebody on screen and I'm on screen and we just talk for a little bit. And this woman came on, Sophia, with her 2 boys. And my whole life changed at that moment. I realized, because they were star seeds. So a star seed child, from just my perspective, just my opinion, just the way I see it, there's a million different ways you can define a star seed. But from my information, a star seed is a being that is holding a much higher amount of their light when they dropped into human form than a lot of us. And they are here for the sole purpose of moving us or teaching us how to be in the higher states. And the star seed has knowledge and information they never need to learn. They don't need to pick up a course somewhere. They don't need to learn things or read things. Like, they know it because it's in their cells, it's in their light, it's in them. And so when we start connecting to these star seeds, we get activated, we get kind of turned on more. We start to realize, oh my God, this is much bigger than my own personal sort of evolution. And some of these star seeds have chosen parents that are awake, and some of these star seeds have chosen parents that are not awake, right? So if you're raising a star seed, your child will be, your child, there's a lot of different ways that your child will be. Maybe your child has been diagnosed with autism, Asperger's, bipolar, schizophrenia, whatever depression that may be. I mean, the diagnoses around a star seed is, I mean, it's just rampant. If you have a star seed child, they won't necessarily feel like they fit in. They will question a lot of things, that things don't make sense to them. They'll have a hard time in structured settings. If you're wondering if you have a starseed child, start asking them questions. Start saying, what happens in your dream state? Start saying, have you ever talked to angels? We imagine these children as children. You know, when I talked to Sophia's boys, I didn't see them as kids. I saw them as beings that are participating in this human journey, and I thank them. You're like, thank you for coming in. My God, you're here. You know, so I see them as beings, not children that don't understand things, right? It's like, oh, no, they know more than, and when I connect to them on that level, they're seen. I had another child come in from my Patreon community. She was 11. She was a starseed. And I talked to her about what she was going through with her school. She doesn't feel like she fits in. She's not seen. She's bullied, all this stuff. And I spoke to her, light being to light being. And when we got off, her mom emailed me and said, she turned to her mom and she says, oh my God, Lorie saw me. Lorie saw me. Lorie knows who I am. And that is what they need. Mm-hmm. That's what they need right now, right? So these children and these adolescents, they need to be seen. They need to be seen. And they're powerful because they're going to be the ones that show us how to do it, right? Like, we're learning and navigating, but we look like we're a mess trying to figure this out, right? And they just show up and they're like, boom, 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 boom. You're like, how the heck did you do that? I've been practicing this for, 3 years, right? So they have the ability to really start to pull us and assist us. And we have to recognize that they're not if you're raising one, yeah, you got to teach them how to like be polite and things like that. But like they know a lot more in terms of consciousness than we give them credit for.
I think that's really important because as maybe you can talk about it, because as a naturopathic doctor, Jay gets confronted with this question oftentimes.
Well, I see a lot of, I had a big pediatric practice for a long time, so I'd see a lot of kids. And one of the areas I'd see a lot of was kids with diagnosis with attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder. That was a really common one. And as much as there can be pieces that can be related to like foods and lots of different things, but one of the things that I've seen so much over the last few years and having this conversation with parents is that what ultimately is trying to happen is you're trying to get your child to conform into a situation that they inherently know it does not fit for them. And rather than trying to get this sort of, square peg to fit in a round hole, it's like they're actually not, they're supposed to fight against the system because they're here to rebuild a new system that actually is going to be better and work better for everybody. So, but it's such a challenge one for parents at the time because, they're getting told by teachers that they're not doing this, they're not doing that. And, when you actually talk to the kids, you can tell like they're miles ahead of it and they know. And it's also another thing we've talked about at times is this concept. This is when we got, even with my stepson, I've learned a big lesson from him, is this concept of hard work. It's like we've been so ingrained that things have to be hard work and we got to put our time in to earn and like all of this stuff. And there might be some value to it, but I can see them on their face like, why the hell are you doing it like that? Like what a waste of time. Like I am not going to use my valuable time to do all of this when, I could probably do it like this in another way. So even if I don't know it quite yet, I'm going to sit back and not waste my time on that. And I could hear myself at first going, oh, lazy. And, and then it's like, it just dawned on me. It's like, oh my gosh. Like it was like, slap myself with my own hand for a second. I'm just like, he's totally in the right. Like, it's like, there's just a totally different system.
Lessons, and the kids are continually bringing us our own lessons that we need to look at. And it's just so perfect.
Yeah. But it's like, I feel like that's such an important one for parents at this point to grasp because we are so, and I see this so much in clinic. It's like, we're very much used to putting our power in the hands of somebody else and then listening to somebody else that's supposed to know more so that we devalue our own intuition. And most parents, particularly moms, when they come in with their kids, most of the time they know, but they've been convinced almost kind of rationally and logically that it should be a different way. And then they get disconnected from their sense of intuition. And I feel like at this point, it's like everything that is happening in my mind now is this sort of transition to being, it's not like you let go of logic, but logic needs to be governed by the gut wisdom and the heart wisdom. And it's like when that is the ruling force, then logic's really valuable. But if we kind of separate from that, our gut is trying to tell us, and we're just trying to listen to what other authority figures are telling us, and it doesn't feel right, that's where we run into troubles. And that's something that I feel like I'm excited because I feel like that's dissolving and we're going to be moving into a very different world where this relationship with our kids can be very different.
I agree. Yeah.
Even the place of emotions and feelings, like even when the moms do feel disconnected from that which they ultimately feel is the right thing to do for their child and for their family, there's the feelings of guilt, there's the feelings of doubt, there's the feeling of, oh, it just doesn't feel right. And I think oftentimes we disregard those, or we downplay it and say, okay, I don't know what to do about that, so let me shove that aside and I'm just going to continue to listen to authority. And that feeling of disconnect continues until, we oftentimes come to depression or numbness.
Well, yeah, what both of you are speaking about is, and especially the conversation with the teenager, I'm assuming it's the teenager that said that, is stepping out of old systems that cannot come along as we shift, right? So these older systems, it's not that they're bad, but that we will find ourselves no longer resonating and able to be in them, right? And if you're on the forefront like you guys are, you'll start to see it first, and then you'll start to help other people see it, like the moms. No, it's okay. We have to start to come back to this sovereign field, which is that you hold knowledge, you receive knowledge, but you're always, the compass is here. So it doesn't matter what anyone's saying. I'll listen, I'll grab, but then I digest and I decide from this space, from my energy, from my frequency, from my knowingness, and that's sovereignty. And as a parent, I'm not a parent, but I have seen my friends go through this, where if a doctor says something, the doctor is right, regardless of what they intuitively feel around their child. And that's the system that we are breaking out of. And I think there are a lot of doctors that are also breaking out of that system. This is how we watch systems collapse and new systems become. It's this process right here. And I also want to touch on really quickly the teenager, because and the observation that you had, Jason, which is like, oh, he's lazy, he's this, he's that, right? That's a third dimensional old paradigm, right? Old system. There's truth to it, right? There's a lot of people that got successful by being super duper busy. But when you start to move into higher states of consciousness, you realize that you don't have to do it in that old system anymore. You can literally just show up, create something, do something, boom, put it out, and you can make millions of dollars. I mean, if you hold that reality, that is really what can happen, right? It doesn't have to be the way that we're used to doing it. So it's awesome. I love that so much. I was like, it's how we're going to move into being, you know? The way I do things is so different, I think, than a lot of people. Like, I don't put a lot of, I don't know if I should say this, but whatever. I don't put a lot of like time and energy in whatever I'm creating next. I literally get the download of what, like my event on the 20th, right? I don't create a big sales page. I don't create a big marketing scheme. I don't create a funnel. I'm like, here it is. Here's the information, a couple paragraphs. Boom, here's the small amount of money. Boom, let's go. And you want to know what my community does? My community on YouTube and Facebook and Patreon. I don't know if other communities have this, so I'm just going to share it and people can tell me if they have it as well. But I find this fascinating. I'm a very abundant person, so I hold abundance. I don't grab anything. If somebody can't afford it, I give it to them for free. I don't tell my audience this. Every single time I put something out for a pretty reasonable price, inevitably I get 10 to 20 people that reach out and say, I want to pay for 3 people that can't afford it. This is like unbeknownst to like other people, like they don't know that other people are doing this. They randomly reach out to me, they email me or they message me and they say, I want to pay for 3 people that can't afford it. How do I do that? I'm like, how is this? What is this? It's the energy that I hold, right? This abundant space, and people pick up on it. And it's just this beautiful way of being where we're all being served, and they're just giving without me saying, hey, who wants to support people? It's fascinating. It happens every single time. I'm just like, oh, how many people are going to sponsor this time, right? I just watch it. It's like, and that's the consciousness that we're moving into.
It's them sending it to like their mom going, Mom, just watch it. Just open it up and watch it and see what happens. Fingers crossed. Well, one thing I wanted to ask too was you had talked about soul contracts, and it was part of this idea of letting go of some of the densities that maybe aren't going to serve us when we move into this next sort of dimension, more or less. So what are soul contracts, and how do we start the process of sort of dissolving those so that we don't take them with us?
Yeah, it's interesting because you actually asked that question a couple days ago. I mean, I saw that question I think you asked that question in the email.
Just in a different way. And then
I talked about it this morning, which I've never, so sometimes messages come in and I'm like, this is so boring. Do I really have to give, I argue with my guides. I'm like, this is a really boring message. Like, do I have to give this message? And they're like, they just will repeat relationship. So I'm like, all right, I'll give I'll speak it. So a soul contract. Now, again, this is just my information. I'm not right. I'm not wrong. It's just the information that I receive. A soul contract is an energetic contract or bond that you're going to have with somebody that's decided prior to dropping into human form for the sole purpose of playing out what you've agreed to have, like the map from the Akashic record. So let's say your Akashic record, one of the things you want to experience in this lifetime is abandonment. Believe it or not, we actually choose these things, right? There's like core issues that we choose. So here's the map, Akashic record, we pull in abandonment. Then, believe it or not, we actually have soul contracts with other consciousnesses prior to dropping in. We're like, hey, do you want to do this part? Do you want to do this part? Do you want to do this part? Yeah, I'll do this part. And it happens in a you can't comprehend it. It's not like conversations that happen, right? It's an energetic exchange. And let's say that the mom that you have is the consciousness like, yeah, I'll play the mom and I'll help you feel a bit abandonment, right? Drop in, and there's an energetic contract that has been created between two physical bodies. Now, there's a purpose for that contract. This child wants to experience abandonment. This person's going to give you abandonment, and then it just plays out for however many years, right? And there's a pattern. There's a natural pattern to this that just, no matter how old you are, I think we all probably have contracts with our freaking mom and dad, right? So like, no matter how old you are, there is a pattern that plays out, right? When you are with the person that you have this massive contract with. And each contract can be a little more intense than other contracts. Some contracts are released without you knowing it. Some contracts last 3 days. Some contracts are a catalyst, right? So they'll catapult you into a different direction. They'll shift you in a specific direction. But they're contracted, they're designed prior to dropping in. And many contracts right now are done. They're expired, so to speak. And so they are holding a frequency based on the Akashic record, which is a third dimensional free field. And you're shifting into a 5D consciousness. So these old third dimensional contracts, which are energetic, which are pulling you to that person, are going to weigh you down, right? There's relationships where you're like, God, this is like weighing me down. I love this person, but when I'm with them, it just feels heavy. I'm done, right? So there's contracts where you can actually just cut the cord and no longer see them anymore, right? And there's contracts like with your parents or your loved one, right? Your children, your aunt, uncle, I don't know, you name it, where you're not necessarily going to cut them out of your life, but you have to cut that energetic cord. So the pattern and that frequency that was holding you together, it has to be cleared. And they were showing me that we have a lot of them right now. Like if you look at our human body, there's just like, oh my God, there's like, lots of energetic cords we have to people. So getting clear on who is this in my life that I have this energetic cord to? How do I know I have an energetic cord to them? It's like a magnet, and there's a familiar pattern that's played out when you're in that connection with them. It feels like you can't get out of it, right? Like you're just stuck to it. And it's very easy to clear or to cut a cord. It's intention. It's visualization, it's intention, it's choosing. And then it becomes, when you're now in the relationship, let's say you don't cut them out of your life, right? But you've cut the cord. Then it becomes, okay, now I'm going to re-engage with them from this awareness that I cut the cord. And that's when it gets fun, because what you realize is they don't know the cord is cut. So they're going to continue to play the same role. They're going to trigger you. They're going to say, oh, no, this is how we do things. I say this, and then you respond this way. And then this is how we do the game. And you're like, oh, no, I don't play that anymore. I'm in a higher frequency. I've cut our cord. I love you. You're awesome. You're doing you. But that contract is done, and I'm going to just watch you still play, right? And they get used to it. They adapt, believe it or not. Depending upon how long it takes them to adapt, will take them that amount of time, but they eventually adapt to this new way of being with you. Or they don't adapt and they just stay in that space. But that's really a big piece for a lot of us right now. What relationships are weighing you down, i.e. energetic cords, soul contracts. Yeah, big. And a lot of us are receiving new higher dimensional sort of soul families, right? Where you're like, oh my God, I know you guys, we're doing this together. This is so awesome. Can you believe we're doing this, right? It's that kind of a feeling where we're all coming together and it's like, oh, there's no energetic cord, there's no trigger, there's no shadow work being done, right? That's higher, that's higher, that's being in higher states of consciousness. And a lot of us are starting to feel that more and more and more. So that's the contract thing that came up today, and the soul contracts, just being aware of that, you know, and it doesn't have to be black and white. It doesn't have to be like, oh my God, I have to cut you out of my life forever. This person's you know, weighing me down, and, you know, it's their fault that I'm in these lower frequencies. It's like, no, it's not their fault. They're just being them. You know, you're sovereign and you have the ability to choose how you want to be with them. If you cut that cord, you're going to be much more free to be in relationship with them the way you want to be. But it's practice, for sure. It's practice, especially, I don't know why this is coming in, but we could do a whole episode on narcissism. But if you're in a soul contract with a narcissist, God bless you. And it's a much more gentle sort of, you want to be much more compassionate and gentle with yourself, because it's almost like it's a really heavy energetic bond that it's almost like you're going to have to cut it. Like it's like a really thick piece of steak that got overcooked. And so you're trying to cut it and it's like, oh no, you're going to have to cut that multiple times. It could feel like that, right? So really having a lot of compassion, because the narcissist won't ever stop, right? They're never going to stop that pattern, and they're going to try to continue to pull you no matter what you do. Maybe with a narcissist, you end up just kind of leaving, turning your back and going, but yeah.
Okay, so this is one of the questions that you felt like was going to be beneficial for us to include, and we're going to touch on it. So how do we basically experience right now at this time the breakdown of the collective systems in order to shift into higher states of consciousness?
I said that was a good question.
You're basically mentioned around the quantum juggling that we're doing right now.
Oh yes, oh yes. Okay. That was a week ago, so now I have to get into that frequency for a minute. So, okay. So here's what's happening to us, okay? We talked about those 3 layers, right? And as our bodies are moving through those 3 layers and shifting and raising and, you know, doing all the juggling that it's doing, the collective's doing the exact same thing. And so what we are observing from our physical body with our eyes is a breaking down of, let's just call it collective human trauma, which can look like mind control, which can look like fear narratives, which can look like control in any fashion, which can look like, you know, censorship, taking away your rights, anything that takes you away from sovereignty, free will, anything that takes you away from your truth, your ability to choose. These are consciousnesses that have been around for thousands of years. And they are played out in government systems, they're played out in the scientific system, they're played out in the educational system, they're played out in the banking system, they're played out in a lot of systems. But we haven't necessarily been aware of them because they've been like the Wizard of Oz, they've been behind the scenes, like our own trauma. I didn't know I had that trauma, right? So we haven't really been quite aware of how manipulated and controlled we've been based on fear, until light starts to really pummel the earth plane in our bodies. And then we start to see. And as light starts to pummel down onto the earth plane, these consciousnesses, or let's just call them human collective traumas that have been behind that Wizard of Oz screen, they start to come out of the shadow because there's so much light. And as they come out of the shadow, we start to see them. And as we start to see them, i.e., what COVID has started to allow many of us to see, right? We've started seeing how we've been controlled, how we are manipulated. We're starting to see these things. It's not bad, it's not good, it's just we see it. But here's what happens to us. We respond and react to it. We get fear, we get angry, we get rageful, we have all these human experiences to it, right? Which is okay. That's a part of it. The juggling piece is, okay, I'm having a reaction and a response to the fact that I just got censored. That's human nature. We've got to allow ourselves to have that response. I need to now speak my truth. We've got to allow ourselves to speak our truth and stand up. I'm going to go protest. Go and protest, right? That's one piece of the juggling or the scale. The other piece is, this is how the entire human collective shifts. This is the breakdown of the human collective. This is the breakdown of lower consciousnesses moving into higher frequencies. And if I allow that's breaking down to frame my reality, then I'm perpetuating what is breaking down, right? So you're watching the movie, you're responding to the movie, but you're realizing it's a movie, right? So you're like, oh, this is a crazy movie scene. Look at what's happening. All the buildings are being blown up. Oh my God, this has to happen because they're going to create a new city. But while the buildings are being blown up, I'm getting irritated, I'm getting scared, I'm getting fearful. So we have to have both. And we have to be okay with both, which is, it's okay that I respond and react when I'm watching this breakdown. But I also know that it's part of the movie and it ends at some other now moment. And if I perpetuate it by continuing to play in it, i.e., give it my fear, right? I respond in fear, I respond in anger, I respond in rage, then you perpetuate it as opposed to, oh, there's going to be another movie scene and I know how this ends and I know what this is all about. Then you can allow yourself to feel whatever you're feeling, but you don't react or respond to it, which is challenging. But that's what we're learning. We're learning how to allow ourselves to feel, I'm watching that movie, this is how or this is my reaction to that movie. But then when I respond, I'm responding from a higher state, right? I'm responding from this higher state. I'm allowing myself to feel it, but then I'm going to respond differently. And that response is what changes the human collective. That response is from that higher state of consciousness. Realizing it's really an illusion. I'm not going to buy into that fear. I'm not going to buy into that control. You can't tell me what to do. That's absurd, right? Sure, you may tell me what to do and I may actually have to do it, but deep down inside, I know I'm sovereign and you have no control over me, right? So this is what we're learning. It's not easy and it's not fun. Like, I would prefer not to necessarily have to go through this, but I also know that this is exactly what needs to happen in order for us to move into these higher states. That's why when I get messages from my guides, they're always like, you guys are literally rock stars. Like, you are literally the most amazing beings ever, because you've chosen to be here at this time where it is the most chaotic, the most stressful, the most beautiful, the most powerful time to ever be in human form. And we got to give ourselves more credit for this, and more compassion for what we're experiencing. But that's the juggling, right? That's the piece that you can't get rid of what's unraveling. You can't get rid of the censorship. You can't get rid of the mind control. It's dissolving. So you got to just move through it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it definitely shows you some strong contrast that helps you paint a better picture of what it is that you do want when you get such strong feelings of what doesn't resonate very well.
Exactly. That's how you wake up, right?
Mm-hmm. So speaking of exactly that then, Lorie, we're just being cognizant of your time as well. We want to be respectful of your time. What's your vision for 2021 and beyond?
Oh my God, just literally creating heaven on earth in every now moment. Like, no matter what, this is how I see it. So I was just in Utah for a week and I was in this ranch where there were buffalo, and the buffalo visited me every day. And I saw the human collective. I saw us, the warriors of light, as these buffalo, right? And it's like, I see us moving into 2021 as these buffalo, like, get out of my way. We are doing this no matter what comes at us. It doesn't matter anymore. You're not going to rattle us. You're not rattling us anymore. So bring on anything. And when I say they, I mean consciousnesses that may be played out by humans, but they're consciousnesses. I see us so solid, like so strong, and just like literally like singing into 2021 no matter what they bring at us. Like, I feel like we're so ready for this and we're so prepared that I don't have any doubt. I don't have any fear. I don't have any worry or anxiety or stress. I believe in us so deeply that all I'm going to do is show up and like, blow the horn and say, just remind humanity every day that this is what's happening. Because I think, going back to the juggle, when you feel what's happening and when you watch the scene, you kind of think Lorie's losing her mind. This is not what she's saying it is, right? And so constantly be needing to remind humanity, no, we got this, I promise, right? And so I see us really being those buffalo, like just charging ahead. And they have no idea what's coming. They have no idea the power of our light. They have no idea. And that's what I'm excited for. That's what I'm excited for, because they don't know what's coming.
Mm-hmm. I love it, Lorie. I think that sounds amazing, and we'll be right there with you. So
yes. I don't know if you guys have felt this, but have you been noticing? I've been noticing this in this community. Every time you connect to a new person, it's like, I know you, right? You're like, wait, we're on the same, we're here, we're on the same team, right? You're like, oh yeah, yep. You know what I mean?
And you know what, Lorie, even with pulling this series together, it was done in a very short amount of time. Like, we got the inkling to do it, and we're like, okay, let's reach out, let's pull it together. The title came in, and we knew who we wanted to reach out for, and little by little, other people started to come through too. Other people were sending him requests to be on, and we're like, oh, you would actually be perfect for the series. So it's like everything kind of fit into place perfectly, and we have this phenomenal series going out to inform and support people. And every time we talk to you guys, it's like, oh my gosh, like, I can't wait to go and visit Lorie or have her come visit us over here. Like, it's I really feel like we're actually choosing our family members. That's what it feels like.
1000%.
So awesome. Yeah.
I've never felt more supported, and that I'm not doing it alone ever in my life. And it's only going to continue to grow and continue to grow and continue to grow.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
It's so wonderful. We've met such beautiful people on this path this last while. So, I mean, we're so fortunate for it. As much as 2020 has been utter chaos and craziness, it's also been like
our best
one
year.
of our best years in so many ways too. Like, I mean, really, despite, like I said, I know there's certain real stuff that's been crazy for people, but it's also been like our most transformational year. It's been a catalyst for like massive changes that we've been ready to do, and just like we
did it.
So Lorie, thank you so much. Such a blessing being able to talk to you. And so where can we send people to learn more about you? What are the best places to send them?
My YouTube channel, which is just LORIE-LADD. So Lorie Ladd on YouTube, Lorie_Ladd on Instagram, and then Lorie Ladd on Facebook.
We'll make sure we got all of those notes down, and then we'll have to do this again when your book comes out, because I know you got a new book that's in the making. So we'll have to set up something and get the word out on that, because that sounds super exciting.
Oh, it's written. I'm just now having to edit it. So yeah, it's the perfect time when it's going to come out. The end of next year, I think it'll be out. So
awesome.
Time is a relative.
Yeah. Lorie, thank you so much. We love you tons, and we're sending you a big virtual hug here. So
Yay! Love you guys. Thank you for having me on. It was so
all right. You take care, and we'll talk to you soon, okay?
Okay. Bye.
Lorie, bye.
Well, that was awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to invest in your health and well-being. Since this podcast is brand new, reviews and subscribers are so vital for us to get off the ground and share this really important information. So if you found this information valuable, please post a review and subscribe to the podcast so you'll get our newest episodes. Also, if you know of someone who would benefit from this, please share it with them. You can also find us on Instagram at #InspireHealthPodcast. If you have a question that you'd like to be addressed, direct message me on Instagram or leave a comment on one of my posts. I would love to hear from you. And you can grab our show notes and free resources for each episode at inspirehealthpodcast.com. So be sure to go online and check it out.